Okay, I'm going to call to order this public meeting, December the 10th at 5:30 p.m. Council would wish to acknowledge the Ucluelet First Nations, of whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. Before we go any further, I'm going to excuse myself just due for a conflict of interest that I have some interest in a couple neighboring lots. There you go.
Oh,
And I will be recusing myself for the possibility of perceived non-pecuniary conflict of interest. That is, my cousin is a part owner in an adjacent property. Thank you.
This public hearing is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Ucluelet's YouTube channel. The notice of the public hearing has been advertised and is available at the Manager of Corporate Services table with a copy of the rules that will govern this public hearing. Council will listen to public input on the matter in the notice of public hearing. Please note there will be no decision at this public hearing. The purpose is to hear from the public before third reading. We have two late items. There is a letter from Robbie Lee as well as Jacqueline Holiday. Copies are available if anyone wants to read those two letters, since they are late items. Joseph has those. Rules governing public hearings. Number 1, as provided for in the Local Government Act, the Council is required to hold a public hearing before adopting an official community plan bylaw, zoning bylaw, or amendments thereto. At a public hearing, all persons who deem their interest in property affected by the proposed bylaws shall be afforded an opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions on matters contained in the bylaw. Number 3, Council may consider amending the bylaws based on the public input received at today's public hearing. Number 4, at a public hearing, the Council is under no obligation to enter into a debate on any issue. The purpose of a hearing is to hear public input, which will later be considered by the Council in their special meeting. You will have as much time to address Council as you need, as long as your comments are focused on the bylaws and licenses which are the subject of this public hearing. Number 5, following the public hearing, Council will not accept further communications or presentations from the public or the applicant respecting the bylaws. Procedure for addressing Council. To maintain order and to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard, our rules of procedure are as follows. Number 1, to address Council, please proceed to the podium and begin your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. If you are speaking on the behalf of an organization or another person, please identify the name and address of that organization or person. If you are speaking from prepared remarks, we would appreciate a copy. Number 2, first-time speakers, please limit your comments to 2 minutes and to matters contained in the proposed bylaw only. Once we have heard from first-time speakers, there will be an opportunity to address Council a second time. Please remember to address your comments to Council. Number 3, to maintain an atmosphere that is respectful of all points of view, it is important for the audience to refrain from applauding or cheering for speakers. We need to respect and hear all views, including those that may be in the minority. And booing is one of those things as well. Number 4, after everyone has spoken once, those wishing to speak again will have an opportunity. Number 5, Council members may ask questions of speakers or staff to clarify what has been said. However, this is not an opportunity for debate. The public hearing will proceed as follows. Number 1, first staff will provide an overview of the bylaw. Number 2, staff will read any unpublished correspondence related to the bylaw. Third, the applicant will be given an opportunity to address Council. And fourth, we will open the floor for public comments. I declare the public hearing for District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1258 open. I now invite the Manager of Community Planning to provide an overview of the bylaw number 1258, 2019.
Thank you to the chair. And I would note just a couple of housekeeping items. We also have copies of the current zoning bylaw and official community plan bylaws for any members of the public who wish to refer to them for reference. Just briefly, in general terms, the purpose of District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1258, 2019 is to amend the District of Ucluelet zoning bylaw number 1160, 2013 to allow as an additional principal permitted use cannabis production on the property located at 2100 Peninsula Road for a proposed future microcultivation and microprocessing facility which would be licensed by Health Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Grieg. I now invite staff to read any unpublished correspondence related to Bylaw 1258 into the record. Or just go get a copy of it. Okay.
Good afternoon. I am out of town for this evening's public hearing regarding the application to grow cannabis on the property off Peninsula Road. In the hearings prior to the retail applications, I was able to ask council members to clarify details verbally. Unfortunately, in regards to the current application to grow cannabis, the members I approached did not have the answers to my questions. I've been attempting to find an information package online. Other than listing the property and what the business plans to do, I am unable to find anything that can answer my questions. She goes on to list her questions. Number 1, Port Alberni just turned down an application for a grow operation. Who is our applicant? How is this operation different? And what makes Ucluelet a better fit to support a business like this? Question 2, what are the water demands for a grow operation? Will Ucluelet's supply be enough to meet the applicant's demands during water restrictions? Question 3, what are the potential job opportunities or benefits for locals? Curious if locals can fill the bulk of the jobs due to housing shortage. Question 4, has this applicant applied in other districts? Were they turned down? If so, why? It is unfortunate I could not find answers to these questions before the hearing today. Without them, I can't formulate an opinion if granting the application is a good idea or not. I do hope that Council considers these questions and more before voting this evening. Yours truly, Jacqueline Holiday from Ucluelet, BC.
Thank you, Ms. Moran. I now invite the applicant to address Council. Mr. Kruger.
Well, it seems like the majority of the issues are with smell. And quite frankly, I do not believe that this facility will produce any smell that will be detected outside of the facility. You are required by law in the cannabis regulations to have a filtration system that prevents the escape of all odor. Those facilities that do not do so are either greenhouses that are doing it outside, where it is not inside of a facility and therefore not required to prevent the escape of odor, or may not be complying with the letter of law in that regard. The reason why we wish to do it here and why we think it is a good fit for the community is because it's one of those industries where you aren't pulling money from a seasonal amount of, or rather a seasonal source, but throughout the entire year will be generating revenue and theoretically able to market it to other provinces like reports, and bring that money back into the community. With between 6 to 8 jobs created, I honestly believe that a fair bit of that money will stay in the community, and that that with that, the creation of those jobs will allow further expansion of the younger population to stay in this community. With regard to the issues of noise, I don't believe that it will create any more noise than any other commercial use, such as restaurant fans or otherwise. To go on to answer the question about water, while its water usage is not a fixed usage, and I'm not able to give you a fixed number, it is significantly less than that used by a fish plant, which does operate during water restrictions. answer the question regarding applying in other locations. We have not applied in any other locations because Ucluelet is the primary location where we would wish to start this business. And that is purely because we live here and we like it here. It actually costs quite a bit more to try and put this forward here. And it could be done quite a bit cheaper and with less issue as far as community impact and potential for people to be affected by it in other locations. For example, if it were done in the interior, you could do it on farmland, do it outside, and do it on a massive scale for a quarter of the price. And we really believe that it is a good fit for the community.
Thank you. Does council have any questions for the applicant?
Can you explain to me the different fans and different filtration systems that you would use for a building like this?
They set out a requirement, or not a requirement, but a suggestion of a HEPA filter, which theoretically should block or filter out 99.5-ish% of all particulate matter. And in conjunction with carbon filters, we believe that that should stop all odors. And if it doesn't, we will take steps to rectify that.
And just to clarify for people listening here tonight, that this is a growing business, and then everything is shipped off. It's dried at the
Yes. So it would be processed on site, and it is sold purely to liquor and cannabis boards. It, quite frankly, wouldn't even need to be sold to the province of British Columbia. It could be sold to the Maritimes. It could, quite frankly, never see its way back here.
Any other questions from council? Councillor Hoare?
Just curious, the HEPA filters, do you happen to know the sort of decibel level that is?
I am not aware of the decibel level that it would take.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kruger.
Just to clarify, though, it would be around what a restaurant fan is. It's merely just blowing air through a filter.
Thank you. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to comment on the District of Ucluelet zoning bylaw number 1258/2019. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak?
I'd like to speak in favor of general principle. I can see.
You'll get your turn.
Hello, my name is Luke Arridge. I live at 1509 Matterson, and I'm the owner of Pacific Rim Distilling. That's at 317 Forbes Road. It's an adjacent property to the proposed growing operation. I just want to start off and say that I think this is the type of family that we really do want to have growing cannabis in and around the community. I think they're a local family that's giving back to the community. They're putting their money back into the community, and they're paying their taxes into this community. And that's exactly what we want. My biggest concerns about it mostly would be the smell. I've been around cannabis production probably just as much as I've been around spirit production, and regardless of what filters are there will be a smell. Even if you go to Kelowna, go to Nanaimo, and you go to those processing facilities and you drive by them, especially on a hot summer day, I mean, the smell is borderline intoxicating, that it's just so thick. My biggest worry here is that in the business that I'm dealing with, I'm dealing a lot of times with the public. And although I am someone who is pro-cannabis, a lot of times the people that come in are not. And I definitely would have really big worries about, especially on a warm summer day when my doors are open, about that really intense smell of cannabis coming through here. And I understand the government has put forward rules and regulations in regards to filters, but all of the establishments that I've personally drove by so far, I could really, really smell that cannabis. So if this were to go through, and if this were to happen, how are we going to ensure and how are we going to police that if that smell does become overbearing, how are we going to get that? How are we going to stop that? I mean, if this family is put in, I'm guessing tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars into this, and then the smell is too bad for the public to take in that area, how is that going to shake out? So that is really, that's my only concern, is that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak? Just at the podium.
Hi, my name is Robbie Lee, and I own the Ukilit Rent Center, plus the property beside where they want to build their building. I started out with the Ukilit Rent Center down behind the drugstore, not zoned, commercially zoned, and we were down there for 8 years and basically bullied by the village, sort of, saying we weren't in compliance with our building permit down there for what we were doing, and forced to pretty much buy a spot up in the industrial park for my building. I'm not opposed to what they want to do. I think it should be done in an industrial area. That lot that I do own, I plan on doing, some cabins or something else. And I just think it takes the value away from my property, having that beside me, and potential clients listening to fans going all night long and stuff, because, they're going to be going 24/7. And I just think that maybe some more homework should have been done, and before I went out and bought a piece of property, thinking that I was going to be able to do it on a commercially zoned piece of property right on the outskirts of town, which in 20 years we don't know what that's going to look like. It could be condos and hotels and everything else. Do we want that right in the middle of it? And I think it takes away the value of the property that I bought for an investment to go on my way, what I wanted to do. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
Mark Fortune, 210 Mionato. I don't have, I'm not a user. I'm probably pretty square in that respect. But I do have some concerns. The location at the moment is the premier entrance into the town. The bicycle path or multi-use path will go right past that facility as well. I'm once again not a fan of cannabis, but the smell I find quite repulsive myself. An example from Port Alberni is Butte Street by the old tin shop by Southside Automotive there. There's a grow op in that location, and it reeks. All of the neighbors in that area have complained to the city. The city has said that they can't do anything about it because it is legal, and they don't have the appropriate bylaws to look after olfactory issues. I think maybe that's something that needs to be looked at here. If you don't have the teeth to regulate smells or odors coming from this property, that's something that should be in place prior to considering this application. What that would be would probably be taking samples of air prior to and then after, and actually have a strengthened bylaw that you could actually deal with an escape of odors. Now, odors is very subjective. Some people may enjoy that odor. Me personally, I don't. I think it would be bad for the community if that's the first thing you do as you come into Ukilit, is you go through a grow op or the smell of a grow op. And I know summertime air transfer, it's going to be maybe a hard one to meet. We've also heard a couple of complaints. My concern there, once again, just location. If it was maybe higher up in the industrial park, I think that's something that could be done. But I think as a gateway to the community, I don't think that would be a reasonable thing to accept at this point in time. Once again, going back to the bylaw, if you have a bylaw that has some, strength to it that you can actually enforce, then you can do something about it. But right now, I think our bylaw, if we have one, maybe it's similar to Port Alberni's, it's mixed in with noise and nuisance garbage, things like that, cars in your yard. And when it comes time to enforce that, you don't have the guts on paper to enforce anything. So once it's allowed, you may be stuck with it. So maybe the first thing you look at would be looking at strengthening a bylaw or introducing a bylaw if this is the location that you wish to put this facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fortune. Would anyone else like to speak?
Hi, my name is Trudy Lee. I'm part owner of 2102 Peninsula Road and 317 Forbes Road. I'm not against the idea at all. I think it's a great idea. I think it is a horrible spot. I think up Industrial Way it would be great, but driving into the town, sorry, I get anxiety. It's going to be one of the first things you see. I don't know what it's going to look like. Is it going to be warehouse with like campgrounds and the Raven hotels next to it? Like, there's big concerns about that, the noise, and also the smell. So for my husband and I, that's our biggest concern. Thank you.
Thank you. In the agenda package, there are diagrams. If you wanted to grab a copy of that to see what it actually is intended to look like. Would anyone else like to speak? For a second time, anyone else like to speak? Oh, okay. And a third time, would anyone else like to speak? I declare the public hearing for District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1258, 2019. Oh, the applicant. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up. Please, yes.
There are other areas such as the state of Alaska and the city of Sacramento, California, which both have quite a few grow operations. The city of Sacramento, I believe, had well over 100 in 2017 and has been growing pretty steadily. They have requirements in place that there be no detectable odor outside of the facility while standing outside of the facility. And with regard to the location as being inappropriate because the industrial park is available, the industrial park location is not appropriate for anything such as this because of the proximity to Tugwell Fields. Because of the close proximity to Tugwell Fields, and the small size of this community in general, there are very few properties that are actually reasonable distance from schools and community centers and playgrounds. In fact, that's actually one of the only areas we were able to find that was remotely close to being outside of those areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kruger. Anyone else wish to speak? And I'll take second-time speakers if anyone would like to speak for a second time. And again, does anyone wish to speak? I have to call it 3 times. And a third time, does anyone else wish to speak? I declare the public hearing for District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1258, 2019 closed. Thank you, and we are adjourned.